How many business failures did you have before success?
How many businesses have you all had before you found your breadwinner? My first business was a success by normal standards, 200K a year plus, but not by Fastlane standards.
Can't recall the exact number. If I had to guess, I'd say 6 or 7.
I guess that's the beauty of it all. Once you find success, you don't really care to remember the failures, but it's part of the necessary process.
Kind of reminds me about when I had LASIK surgery. I woke up one morning with perfect vision and don't really remember the times I couldn't see.
I've ensured that all of my ventures are cash flow positive from day one. That being said, some I've had to shut down while others were acquired. Sent from my Samsung SMG 930A using taper talk.
7 that I consider real attempts.
Okay, revised to 7.05 attempts.
Shopify store selling confectionery failed, didn't understand my market. 2. Blog on controversial topics failed, didn't persist and gave up after 3 months. 3.
Web design freelancing didn't fail, but I didn't try to scale, so I moved into 4.
PPC management currently succeeding, hit 6 figures this year and growing HR, so I remove myself entirely from the business. As long as you learn something, each business is not a failure.
6 for me. Seems like 6 to 7 seems to be the common theme here. With proper education and direction, this number can surely be reduced.
The older I get, the more I truly see how experience in entrepreneurship is at such a great toll to sanity and general well-being.
If I had to do it all over again, I would have focused so much more on finding a mentor. All of the pain and pitfalls that could have been avoided effortlessly.
I stopped counting after 5th or 6th failure. MHM lesson.
I failed a lot. I've pretty much lost count at this point.
I haven't made it yet, but at this point, I don't really care how many more times I have to fail until I succeed. Something that said in one of his threads really resonated with me.
About how he doesn't care if a product gets a crazy amount of sales per month, just as long as it is a superior product, to be happy with even profiting an extra $100 to $200. So that's what I'm focusing on now. I'm just focused on creating a product that is better than what is already out there. Even if it barely sells any at all, I will feel good that I'm actually helping people, and I will build my business one $100 product at a time if I have to.
Lost count of how many failures I've had. Still working or failing and trying my best to make the most out of the experiences. If only mentors are so easy to find.
So far I've only met gurus and pseudo-mentors with ulterior motives. Having said that, I'm glad I found this forum. Learning a bit of everything from everyone is by far the closest I have to getting a mentor. They definitely opened my eyes to things I didn't even know existed, and their stories helped me avoid huge pitfalls and kept me going when things I really failed to that I consider serious attempts so far. Still looking for success. Thanks for sharing's great advice. At least 3 major failures that nearly destroyed me and my family. The other 4 or 5 were minor failures. All were just stepping stones. So that's 0 failures? Teach me, old wise one. LOL. 5 or 6. Failure could mean anything. If we follow the strict definition of business existing when you make a sale, even if you have no formal business body that you can operate in, then of course lots of people can say they failed. Lots in that scope.
I stopped counting failed proposals, freelance gigs, resell attempts and so on. You can easily fail without a business structure in place, as they take longer to die. Failure could also mean downsizing a company, wrapping it up and liquidating everything.
Have we failed at that level yet? Of course you find fewer failures there, as fewer people have gotten up to that level. Failure can also be more micro. Failing a business partner.
Supplier. Employees. One of my biggest regrets from freelancing is not following up with a client well enough to deliver some writing work.
The guy was getting married, and he said he would continue our gig after the honeymoon.
I congratulated him and wished him well. I respectfully did not bother him for too long a time, I must say, until the contract lapsed.
I hope he's alright. I think we should fail safely, in a way that doesn't kill us or the business, or create a system that fails for us. That is why folks have developed concepts like statistics and A or B testing as a means to fail for them.
Haven't had the success bit yet, but haven't been swinging at it long. Started in earnest roughly around the time of registering here. Bona fide business failures so far, 2.
The first was something I had no idea if it would be in demand or not, but I just wanted to launch into selling a product to get my feet wet in business.
It sold enough to make a pittance, which given the work put into it made it a failure.
Learned a lot as to why it was a pointless venture from the get-go, but couldn't have gained that knowledge without executing on it. So was worth it. The other seemed like something that would be in demand, but really wasn't because I didn't properly understand that type of customer, but really couldn't have known they were a dead end without executing on this idea. They turned out to be the type of dumb $8 customer who they want a thing but that thing. Kind of like how most gym goers start after New Year's and never go back after 2 weeks. So it was worth the test and wasn't wasteful. Result, went broke, but the skills I built under those businesses were in demand, and the work I'd done acted as portfolio, so it allowed me to fall back to a decent job that paid well enough to rebuild savings at an acceptable rate. What I did right, what I did wrong. Key finding: this should be the starting concept of any new business play.
Definitely not. This seems like a good business idea. The overall value was, I learned why those 2 ventures failed, which is putting me on stronger footing for when I execute the next one.
You'll have to get your Flame War merit badge somewhere
Not
else.
sure I can count the number of attempts, but I know it took me roughly 6 to 7 years from start of journey knowing zero to hitting good money in my choice of business. It took me roughly 12 to 13 years though from the mindset of I know I'm gonna hit $1 million net in the bank, to actually hitting it.
This is me telling myself at 17 I am going to make it. So if you do the math, I spent the first 6 or so years in my 12 to 13-year journey floundering around not knowing what I should focus on or do.
This was from the ages of 17 to 23. Once I did find my focus, it took another 6 to 7 years to go from 0 to hitting my goal ages 23 to 30. If most people attempt something for a year and failed and got their 6 to 8 failures above, then I am pretty much on the same track like everyone else because it took me that many years once I got focused and started.
It really depends on the definition. I've had a lot of side gigs fail, enough that I'm fully scripted right now I guess.
Depending on how you count, I'm up to 4 or 5. The quickest thing a new entrepreneur should learn to help avoid mistakes is understanding their costs fully and completely. It's relatively easy to build up impressive looking revenue numbers. $100,000 in year 1 is not even remotely unrealistic for most businesses.
But there's a very, very good reason why you don't often see the after-tax profit number being thrown around in case studies and success stories.
The number of businesses running high revenue, low profit businesses is staggering.
I'd even say it's the rule, not the exception. Even bank account screenshots aren't great indicators. Look at any business bank account after Black Friday and you'd be downright envious until you realize that the owner just ran the most expensive month of the year for advertising dollars spent, needs to do an expensive inventory reorder, is about to be bombarded with returns, and still has to pay their taxes. I know I've been guilty myself of not understanding what I made in a year until I got the summary from my accountant after tax season. This should never happen. Keep good financial records, then keep them better than that. Too many to count. Mostly because of not knowing what I was doing, not knowing my numbers and losing very fast interest. Thanks to TMF. Unscripted in this forum I now know what to do, or more important what not to do. In fact the business I was running last time and did fail miserably at I'm running again, and this time with success. It's still a job and not Fastlane, but I'm pulling in the opportunity knocks. I can go Fastlane with enough experience and capital. It's all about setting goals and stick with them. I just find it disingenuous to come in here presenting yourself as such an amazing business person that you've had no failures and everything you touch is gold. This thread is such a real look at what it takes to be successful in business.
Anyone just starting out should know this is the reality of being an entrepreneur. Also reminds me of the Mark Cuban quote, "You only need to be right one time." For me, sitting around 3.5. And I'm sure I'm not
6
done
or
yet.
7. But every one of them I can trace exactly where I went wrong in using MJ's sense model.
I used to think failed businesses would be like oh shit that came out of nowhere, but it's almost always a failure to meet sense or meet it to the proper extent.
This is the first time I'm creating a list of my failed attempts. Counting 5 real attempts in total, and I haven't made it yet.
I haven't lost my motivation and will continue once I'm fully recovered from my burnout. I started this with 2 partners, my brother and a developer, back in 2007. We were gaining some traction and wanted updates to the website, but the developer wasn't motivated enough. We quit.
Now there is a successful platform called Housing Anywhere. In hindsight, I should have learned to develop it myself.
Unfortunately, at that moment I hadn't read TMF yet. I found a client and traveled to Spain to network with recruitment agencies and schools. In the end I couldn't find the right people and the client lost interest. It was really hard to combine with my full-time job.
And it really didn't fit my personality. This was my first attempt in which I made money. Sales of the ebook were doing well using Facebook ads, but finally the audience got saturated. The blog wasn't doing too well. I finally lost interest and quit. Together with my brother we had the idea to create clothing lines for influencers. For a percentage of the sales we would take care of all the design, manufacturing and distribution while the influencer would do the marketing. We found a client influencer and started working. We found a designer and a manufacturer. I traveled to Portugal to meet the manufacturer. 6 months later we had 3 sweaters ready for sales. It flopped and we lost 10K. We decided to quit.
This is where I experienced the first signs of a burnout. I got this idea based on my own health issues. I saw an opportunity to create a supplement brand.
I jumped on the opportunity and gained traction using Facebook ads. Unfortunately, not too many customers were reordering. This is where I noticed the importance of recurring revenue.
And a product pricey. The product just didn't fill a big enough need. It was also too niche for a small market like the Netherlands. I couldn't find an insurance which covered sales to the US. I started thinking of products to add but couldn't find a direction.
I should have focused on a target market first instead of being focused on a product. I gave this so much thought that in the end, next to having a full-time job and 2 young kids at home, it caused me to burn out back in April 2017.
I'm still recovering from the burnout. It's definitely hard to create a business, but for sure the 5 previous attempts have taught me a lot. I hope these lessons will be enough to make the 6th attempt a
Leaders
success.
develop strategies to assess, position and execute against opportunities in the market.
They employ tactics to implement the strategies. Tactics are realized through programs, which are made up of projects, having work streams of tasks. Being at the edge of innovation means that projects and programs will fail.
But our strategies account for this and loosely couple them from core business operations. That's how R&D functional areas spin out of engineering or operations. Often launching a venture in an emerging market means using new strategies and tactics that aren't proven.
However, can often produce a huge landfall if it's viable. But is failing as a result of calculated risk truly failing? Following the pattern of proven strategies on how to start to monitor and exit the market. Doing so allows you to be cash flow positive from day one and not lose money in the venture. PPC is where I'm focusing right now, specifically FB, so it's great to see someone here who's got it down. Congrats. I'd guess around 10 if you count each individual website. If you're just going by business models, then 2. I started out with affiliate marketing for Amazon, and while I wouldn't recommend it as a platform for long-term success, it was a great learning tool and played a hand in building my e-commerce business. In a way though, I never really considered most of my affiliate websites as failures either. I usually made at least some money from them. I just didn't see enough success to warrant putting in the effort required to really grow them to where I was making a decent living. I started my first business in March. An exterior cleaning business in Ireland wasn't the greatest idea, but I learned a lot from it and I finally got started. The business was going well and I still get calls, but I had absolutely zero interest in the work, and in the end it just became a money grab.
I'm now trying to do Google Ads for local service businesses, but I haven't found any clients yet. Me and my friend are meeting tomorrow to maybe start a painting business, and I can use my Google Ads skills to get us leads and contract the work out.
I don't give a FCK if I fail 50 times. I'm gonna crack this entrepreneur thing someday and get me my money.
Thanks for all the replies. Everyone learned a bunch here. Just met someone who is a mechanical engineer and we are working on creating some products that don't exist yet.
This is much like the story in MJ's book about the guy he saw in the Ferrari who was an inventor. Very exciting times.
Marking notable so people can understand that failure is a piece of the puzzle. Your first attempt at business will really be the one you succeed at.
I hate using the word fail. I prefer to see it as a discovery of how not to do
things.
And sometimes you need to find a lot of the wrong ways of doing things before you finally find the right way of doing it.
There will always be trial and error, from choosing the best stapler to having to close down an entire business. Just make sure you always learn from them. Don't get stuck in the same flow because of persistence. I'm not sure where I land. I am currently on my first business adventure, but I have learned much from family businesses I have been involved with.
Some have failed due to management, some have failed due to external factors, travel agency after 9 or 11, some are struggling, some were closed simply due to boredom then reignited because of a struggling alternative business, and some were very successful and finally sold off to retire.
Do you see failure as a component to business success?
I've turned this into poll and posted on the front page. I'd love to get a form sampling to see what is reality around here. Please vote. Why would you say it is like that? It's interesting.
Yeah. Let Dollar City hedge on the expanding lower class and poverty sales.
If someone can't casually drop $50 on a thing, then I'm going to end up with headaches on the back end anyway, or so it seems. I wonder if anyone's ever done some data analysis on that and seen how complaints or returns etc. correlate with the price of a good or service.
I feel like it's lots more trouble on the low end, but I wonder how expensive a single purchase has to get for it to pick back up again with the same ratio. $500? 5,000? But I digress.
Well, I just figured it out. A total of 10 failed businesses before real success.
7 for me.
Damn, I'm curious what you told yourself after the 5th and 6th.
So I have a question. On number 3, the blog, if you would have been having success, would you have kept it going, or do you think you would have lost interest even if it had been a success?
Grew up in small business, had to get out of THRA, helped build a department, politics sole proprietor.
Did well, Incorporated Inc., should have folded twice due to cash flow issues. No true failures, am on like the 5th iteration, so said 4.
That is a really good question. And thinking about your question seriously now, I can't give you a conclusive answer. I would lean towards loss of interest because I'm not really passionate for the weight loss market.
But who knows, that passion might have sparked after helping lots of people. Just out of curiosity. Why are you asking?
I told myself I have another 25 plus years to get it right. It doesn't have to be right now.
I just have to keep learning, trying and giving myself the opportunity to draw a gold gumball. It only takes gold gumball.
I didn't want to hijack this thread, so I sent you a message.
MJ, you didn't have a 0 option. So I really thought about this, and I can honestly say 0.
But I say this with an asterisk because I dabbled before. I had a blog with AdSense. I had a hobby business where I made it a business to get wholesale pricing, and I had real estate.
But I don't think any of those really qualify as me really trying to start a business. My first real business was my e-commerce camo business that I started in 2007.
This was the first one that I actually got an LLC, a business license and business bank account. So I think I got lucky with my first one. But my next 3 to 4 businesses failed, and I ultimately decided to stop trying to start more businesses and to stick and grow my first one.
I'm still failing, sort of. Still working on stabilizing my primary business, handmade stuff, which is not Fastlane.
I do make a small profit, but the income needs to be stable before I dabble in any more Fastlane ventures, although they are always being worked on in my head and in the background.
Any ideas why your subsequent ones failed? I'd like to think that once I sell my current business I'll be able to start another successful one, but often worry that this one might have been a fluke.
I've had at least 2 to 3 failures that I can remember, where either the business wasn't profitable or I folded up something that might have been profitable with more patience.
I'm voting for the last option in the poll though, because despite some short-term profitability I haven't actually created a profitable business.
It was a long time ago, but what I can remember is that for 2 of the businesses, my dropshippers were really unreliable. On the 4th one, I just didn't spend enough time on it.
Basically, I was trying to run a bunch of niche e-commerce stores, and once I decided to just do one store, it was much easier and it took off.
Do what I love business website for meal plans and advice about anxiety and lifting.
Before I joined the forum subscription underwear business failure number 2, after reading TMF I thought, hey, it makes sense. Legit had no idea, wasted a good couple months
just
on this.
Just found the forum and was pumped just to start anything. 3rd business, in the grind now, don't know yet. But I'm definitely getting somewhere with this one, unlike the others, so not sure yet.
For me it was 1, but I still haven't mastered it. I honestly just recently realized I was successful because I've made money online consistently. For the longest I was like, if I'm not making $50,000 a month I'm not successful. 0, I think. My business just evolves as I move along a sliding scale from contractor to freelancer to agency to platform. I am also at zero. I had not considered starting a business during the 8 years of college and then worked as an employee before owning. Profit, yes. Fastlane, no. Would the poll still be amendable to add 0 or 0 with a mandatory explanation or options such as, I have never tried, I have made profit and not failed, or I am one and done swimming in my FU money? How many do you need? These statistics are encouraging. As of today, 49 people have had success versus 72 who are still failing. I am one who is still failing, but I have a lot that I can change to get into the previous category, because I am failing through my own fault, and the cool thing is that I have the power to change it.
I tried a clothing business without having any clue about how that industry worked. Failed really hard.
Then I tried YouTube. Worked but was unreliable. Now I have a mineral company. Let's see how that works.
It's widely anecdotally accepted that the lower the price point, the more complaints and returns.
I found this myself. Everyone I talked to found this, and every speaker in real life or YouTube I listened to said this. The less money people spend, the more they complain and demand.
It's to do with personality defects that disproportionately and causally affect the poor. For this reason it is for new small businesses to do the best they can to screen them out and target moneyed or higher class groups instead. You can always expand into their shitty market later once you've got the capital to create the necessary economies of scale and to hire customer service meat shields.
What I consider success has changed. Before I considered just a time for money side gig was a success.
It took me 4 attempts to find something that got me profit. Now success is something that I will be able to scale and separate from my time and location, so still failing.
What do you mean by successful? Monthly income? Popularity,
well,
tendency.
4 big fails to date, and I don't believe success is balance, but honest self-awareness plus keeping family plus financial freedom seems to be a win. But holy crap, I feel like I'm knee-deep and still in the 3B quadrant.
Habits, God help me. In the last 3 years I've generated millions and due to consumption and soft self-generated fake FTEs, along with great goals punctuated with poor act, assess and adjust follow through, here I sit with failing business, struggling to pay bills. I grew up with a great, loving family and inherited position in a community.
I inherited nothing but debt. Typical, but my biggest failure has been that I simply felt I deserved things.
I had marriage and kids, my kind-hearted upbringing, and I only wanted to give them the life I had. My parents did a great job of providing a loving home, but I was not prepared to lay down my comfort zone or even know how to look pragmatically at my own silly greedy tendencies towards status and seeking comfort.
There is an absolute perversion in the I want to work for myself mentality.
I've learned entrepreneurship begins with sheer emotion and ends with real wisdom, if you've got the right mindset. In fact, I think we should all draw a bright line between what we consider our own skill and personality. You have a gift, but you also have a perversion of that gift. MJ does an incredible job of creating a wake-up call to the 3Bs.
I think you could take it a step further by assessing yourself on the things you or your business is gifted at. Such as leader versus tyrant or manipulator, steward versus time waster, giver versus waster, servant versus pushover, attentive versus micromanager, visionary versus detached from reality. This caused my FTE in the last 90 days.
Wow, I felt like a child. I brought a flower to a gunfight. Imagine leaving food out on your doorstep at night thinking you're feeding homeless kittens, only to realize you've been sustaining a mother cobra and her babies, and by the way, those kittens were tasty too.
Now that I've begun to simply be real with myself, I'm just beginning to stage 3 adjust my own habits with new ones.
I've been poor and I've been rich. Rich is better. 0 and 4.
Now let's begin again, Mr. Edison. And thanks MJ sent from my iPhone using TaperTalk.
This is so far 4th business. None of them failed, but they transferred from one to another. None of them failed in making money, however every one of them failed to provide real wealth, time, finances, freedom and life on my terms. Wow, the poll is a bit shocking to me. Most of the people who have businesses haven't failed a lot. Now I feel like a failure. MJ. Probably it's because they define mistakes differently. Maybe a mistake let them learn a new trick that raised sales by 10%. Or a mistake turned out to be a blessing in disguise. For instance, I dropped a client from Upwork recently even though he was offering nearly 4 figures for pay. Could have been considered a mistake by most folks who just want the money, but I found out that by doing so, I actually freed up more time to go after better work. Plus, not every mistake closes down the biz. If they did, well, we're effed. And if you want to think about the exponential growth graph, the folks with businesses are most probably at the rising end of the line, as a business pushes them to take so much action and progress so much, that any mistakes that actually holds them back just become more and more insignificant. On your feelings, though, I think that the best teacher is he who never forgets that he has to learn better and faster than his student. Half the businesses I've tried became a success, but only problem is they couldn't be scaled to Fastlane levels because they violated most of the Fastlane commandments. When you are young you have a whole lot of energy and make a mistake of thinking that you will forever be young.
As I grew older I realized that I was running out of energy, so I started thinking of businesses which can bring income even when I'm 95% absent. That shift in my thinking alone made a big difference.
I started reading blogs about how to handle money, then escalated to full-length books, and now I'm on entrepreneurial forums. I would say it's not only about succeeding in business, but it's about succeeding in a fast-lane business.
Holy shit. I've been thinking this for so long, just never really been able to articulate it. Personality defects exist in the rich as well.
I guess money can get to your head. I know you can't generalize, but here it is. The reason I know this is because I come into contact with people from all walks of life.
After a while, you definitely see patterns. Trust me, the middle class is the easiest to deal with.
At 21 years old, Italian restaurant failed due to the 2008 recession, and I didn't save money for emergency. It was crazy for me. Didn't lose money as I started it with only 5K.
Was doing good for a year and half. After that, a lot of small mall kiosk businesses, never lost money in it, just closed them after they stopped making money. Kids amusement rides inside the malls, sold last year at the right time.
Malls are dying in general. It was successful businesses for 5 years, but to make me rich.
Back to 9 to 5 again till I start on something good. This time I am going to be more patient before I go all in again. I am sure there is other small business ventures I forgot.
Offline I was driven salesman of the month most of the year but had no life and hated every minute of it.
Is that success? Online is a funny story. I stumbled into success right off the bat with a hit. But, had no idea on how to capitalize at that time. Blew it.
Had 3,000 buyers that trusted me in a very short time. Momentum. Could have hired a mentor. Expanded, but I coasted. Been a salmon swimming upstream for years. Sometimes the entrepreneur in us needs to have a slice of humble pie and think long game hard.
In 6th grade I got the bright idea to buy and resell Pokemon cards to my classmates. I saved up my lunch money for a few days and started buying cards from my friends and tried to sell them for a higher price to my other friends. I ended up broke and
Turns out
hungry.
no one wanted the cards I had bought. Know your customer.
Don't go to market with Pikachus when all they want are Charizards. I decided to save up some more lunch money and try again. The very first day of my second attempt someone had told the teacher what I was doing and I got in trouble.
The teacher told me we don't do those kinds of things in this school. It's forbidden. Pokemon was still a huge thing at my school, so I decided that if I couldn't buy and sell, I would host a Pokemon tournament during lunch.
I told my best friend, Kyle, that I would organize the tournament and let people compete for $2. Kyle told me that my idea was stupid and no one would pay me money. I'm also pretty sure that he stole my juice box. Kyle was wrong.
By the end of the week I had 6 friends sign up for my Pokemon tournament. I was pretty decent at sales. It was then I realized I had a problem.
I had no idea how to set up a tournament. Turns out I didn't have to worry because shortly after my realization I got called into the office. Someone told us you were talking kids out of their lunch money.
Bellowed my teacher. I tried to explain but to no avail. I was, once again, in trouble and had to return all the money. My teacher is a socialist. Also, most people don't like salesmen. That's some more. I tried to sell candy to people passing by on the sidewalk. Surprisingly, I don't even remember exactly what I sold or for how much. What I do remember is the lashing my grandmother gave me when she found out. You can't do that. We don't sell things, it's not what we do. My grandmother was also a socialist. The night I told my parents what I did and asked about my grandmother's puzzling reaction. My dad was amused that I had found a way to make money. My mother, on the other hand, was furious. Don't you ever talk to strangers like that again. You'll get kidnapped. So much for that sweet idea. It was 9th grade when I noticed that my neighbor was big on buying cheap cars and flipping them for a profit. After a little cajoling, I convinced my parents to allow me to buy a car using the allowance I had been saving.
It took a week of searching, but I had finally found my used and abused Ford Beauty. $250 later my dad and I drove away, money signs dancing
This
in my
rust bucket
mind.
was the key to my fortunes. Long story short, a mere 2 miles down the road the car caught fire and with it burned up my ambitions of ever flipping cars. It helps to have a little knowledge of something if you're going to sell it.
And still don't know anything about cars. For the rest of my 9th grade year, and the entirety of my 10th grade year, I had a string of moderate successes. I sold water at local sporting games on hot days. Organized yard sales for family members. Even had a brief stint of buying Jack Russell dogs, breeding them, and selling them for hundreds of dollars each.
It is possible to make money without having a real job. The late computer nights during the summer between my 11th and 12th grade years allowed me to discover two big things: online poker and the pickup artist community. I convinced my dad to let me sign up to a poker site with his credit card and play under his name. Within weeks I turned a $20 deposit into almost $500.
A few weeks later and I was making a steady $350 averaged a week. I was really good at poker. When I wasn't playing poker I was out with a buddy hitting on women and trying to apply things I read about on poker forums. I quickly learned that most of the advice I read was clearly given by men who have probably never talked to a member of the opposite sex before. I hit on close to 1,000 women
If
that
I wasn't
summer.
playing poker, I was out with a friend at malls, bowling alleys, shopping centers, the city center, and parties. Lots of parties. I got so good that guys online were now asking for my advice. Towards the end of summer I decided that since I was so good at online poker that I would take all my money and move up to the high stakes.
I wanted the big money and wanted to play with the big boys. A few short days later I was left sitting there trying to figure out what the hell happened. I had lost all my money.
Single.
I was actually pretty bad at poker.
People in the lower stakes was just so god-awful horrible that I was able to make money off of them. I was bad at managing money. After losing all my money I attempted to persuade my parents to give me a loan.
Instead, they suggested I get a real job. Couple weeks later I'm now working at a mail sorting center for DHL on the weekends. To say I hated it would be a massive understatement.
Having a real job sucks and I never wanted another one. It didn't take me long to get fired from that job. Good riddance. It was then I took some of the money I made and went to the bookstore. Hour later I came out with several books on poker and one on money, Rich Dad,
I have
Poor
a folder
Dad.
on my computer. I keep all the different business ventures and ideas I have or am working on. I for the first time just looked through it and counted each
Success
section.
ROI, 3 failures, 7 ideas I researched but decided not to pursue. 18 I'm currently working on a new venture that meets all the next commandments, really hoping I can add this one to the successes category. At 17 years old I created a platform to help entrepreneurs meet investors and other experienced entrepreneurs to help them build their company. The platform arrived to almost 1,000 users. There were 11,000 euros deposited from investors that were looking for startups and 3 entrepreneurs who shared their business ideas looking for help. Eventually I had to shut down the company. Is that considered a failure?
Probably is cause they read the Millionaire Fastlane, something you couldn't do.
This poll is crooked. Where is the option for? Just kidding. I'm at 1 to 2 failures depending on how you count them before my first success.
I was part of multiple business attempts that failed, even though I was not the founder. So I'm counting those.
Op last seen June 2019. I often wonder where people end up. Not this guy in particular, but I suspect some people move on to the next shiny object.
Currently 2. 1. Amazon FBA with plastic part cups, very tough competition, low entry. 2. Proofreading agency. I still have not given up on this. I need to find another marketing channel than G-Ads. Currently busy with other stuff though. Needed this thread. Just wrapped up on attempt number 4. Been feeling very discouraged for a few months now, like it's just not meant to be, even playing the self-pity victim card at times. But I have this Bill Burr clip bookmarked for whenever I catch myself on the verge of tapping out, which usually snaps me out of it. As says, failure is the sweat of success, must keep moving forward with the experience and knowledge gained from the failures. I went to Los Angeles to make my fortune when I was 19 years old. I've made and lost several in the real estate business. I'm a lot smarter now about how to build things up and then hang on during downturns. I hear that the average is that you must make it 3 times. You lose the first 2 and hang on the third on average. 4 to 5, still haven't succeeded. But now I know probably I will. 4 and still trying. First one, I tried selling handmade plush toys and polymer clay jewelry with a friend. Cute stuff, but took so many hours to produce, and we had to put a super low price. From this I moved to giant dragon sculptures for folk performances, also too time consuming and clients with very low budgets, so also a failure, even though I made 4 to 5 very cool pieces and I got 3,000 profit on each. But for a year of work each and I've made history in a way. This pieces will probably be used for hundreds of years. On parallel I did custom resin trophy commissions, which worked quite well. 500, 1 to below a month on the good months. But once I tried raising prices to match with a good hourly rate, €20 or each, I started having problems with clients. Also random commissions, portrait paintings and theatre props mainly, for some of which I've been able to charge that hourly rate, some others which have been major fails.
But overall well paid. And, for a year, I've been both preparing for a scripted backup plan at college to become a high school teacher and developing a sense-based business on my own. And quart, and NBSP, or 100%
I'm probably on route to number 1.
Only 1? I have small failures every day. But, I also have those successes that make it all worth the time and effort.
It's a painful one though. I've been working on it for almost 3 years now.
Those hurt. I've had some big ones over the years. What have you learned? What can you take forward from the situation? Can you salvage anything? Hang in there. This is one stone in your road.
Thank you for your reply.
I'm still not 100% sure what I could have done better. I'm still reflecting on it. In general, I tried to grow the business too fast and took on more orders than I could choose.
A lot of unhappy customers, since we had to refund all the ones we couldn't fulfill.
Not to mention lost money. The thing is, I'm not even sure if doing the opposite, going too slow, would have been a better approach, as going fast helped push myself to my limits. One thing I can say is I think I misinterpreted DiMarco's TMF statement. Debt can be useful.
I went into debt to grow the business ranging from $15 to $25K, and after the fact, I think it would have been much wiser to not have gone into debt at all, as it would have cost me much less in interest had I simply just had a larger savings balance prior. At the same time, taking on the debt allowed me to advance to the forefront of my niche industry. Having to take too much time to save instead might have made me fall behind in terms of innovation.
Because we took on debt, we're now definitely a leader in this niche, but our rate of production can't meet the demand, and the debt sucks. I am fortunate enough to be able to survive the debt via making some clever and critical financial moves, but spending 3 years to only be negative overall at this point is quite a bummer.
It's weird, since I could have been positive if I left the business early at 4 figures revenue, but because I tried to grow to 5 figures and beyond, I'm now negative.
Growing is really confusing to me.
I really don't understand the revenue versus profit game. For us, growing allows higher revenue but weaker short-term profit margins due to the costs of growing, whilst staying the same size allows for healthy margins but at the cost of actually becoming big at all. Greater than _greater than.
One might think that the investment in growing is worth it, but it's so hard to predict the future.
It really is just a big risk, which can be mitigated and minimized, but time and energy will always be lost no matter what.
Ideally one would want to just bootstrap profitably all the way, but this has been much harder in practice in my experience to actually do. Undoubtedly I had to learn a lot as the result of running my business. You just are forced to learn more in terms of finances, managing, and operations, etc.
As a business owner. But I really hate leaning on the "I'm learning" excuse every time I fail. Debt is a double-edged sword. And you had your nose up against the problem of needing working capital to grow your business. It's taken me 35 years. A lot of planning, mega sacrifices, and buckets of tears to get off of that treadmill and out of that headlock. You can't grow without additional money, and then you can't make a profit when you are paying it back. Stop. Take a deep breath. Sleep on it. And then write to yourself, telling yourself all about your dilemma. After a few pages, stop again and look over what you are telling yourself. Then go to sleep again, giving your subconscious mind the chore of giving you some insight. Put a paper and pencil next to your bed. Write down whatever your inner self comes up with, no matter how silly it sounds. You will find that you know the answers as to how to proceed.